Well, for more on the upcoming talks in Saudi Arabia, joining me live from Odessa, Ukraine, is a member of the Ukrainian Parliament, Oleksiy Goncharenko. Oleksiy, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. What does Ukraine need to secure in these discussions in Saudi Arabia?
No, I think the most important is just to define Ukrainian red lines, which is acceptable for us and which is not. In my personal view, there are three things. First is our territorial integrity de jure, meaning that occupied territories, Ukrainian territories by Russians, yes, they will be controlled by Russians after the end of hostilities, at least part of them, but they are Ukrainian territories. That is very important for us to keep this non-recognition policy, because one day the last colonial empire in Europe will fall apart, speaking about Russia, and Ukraine will regain control over territories. Number two is sovereignty, meaning that Ukraine makes its own choices about what army to have, what military production to expand, and what alliances to join. This is very important. Number three is security guarantees, meaning that, first of all, definitely from European Union and European countries, meaning what will prevent Russia from attacking again. So these are three things. Again, territorial integrity de jure, sovereignty, and security guarantees, which I think should be our red lines.
On the security guarantees, can they happen without the U.S. and just European countries?
No, they can't. In general, I just want to be absolutely frank with you. We can't survive without the United States of America. And I just want to address all those who listen to us now and who watch us now. We need United States support. We are very thankful to American people. I just want to thank again American people for all support we received. And for us to survive, we need this support. In other case, hundreds of thousands of people will die. Hundreds of thousands. It's unacceptable scenario, and we need to avoid it together.
President Trump has noted the increase in attacks on Ukraine from Russia this week. What's it been like this week in Ukraine compared to previous weeks?
It was a difficult week, I should be frank with you. It was hard. Russians attacked. They tried to use this absence of American support, including intelligence sharing. But I want to tell you, we want peace. We want peace as soon as possible. And President Trump, we believe that he can give us this peace. Just we need to be as frank as possible and as clear as possible in our secure guarantees and other red lines that we have. But we need this support. And one thing which is very important for us, and I think President Trump also realizes it, is that there is now a lot of pressure on Ukraine, a lot of pressure. Speaking about that we don't have intelligence, military support is on pause, and so on. But it's time to put pressure on Russia, because Russia doesn't want any peace. Just, for you to know for sure, Russia doesn't want peace. And only President Trump can pressure them, can leverage them to go to negotiation table and to make a peace.
Mm-hmm. Now, you have in the past been critical of President Zelensky. You're not a member of his party. You're in a different party. Do you think that he should stand for election soon, or is it impossible now given the war?
It's absolutely. I am not supportive of President Zelensky at all. But I want to tell you, we can't have elections right now. It's just physically impossible from the security point of view. But what would I think would be great from President Zelensky to do? In 2018, when he ran for president, he promised that he is running for just one term, that he will not seek re-election. And I think now it's time to remind this. And if he would come and say, we can't have elections today, but we will have elections after the end of the war. I will make free democratic elections in which I will not run. I will not run again. And Ukrainian people will elect some new president. That would be the great step from him, I think. And that would be something which will take off all the questions from the table.
And finally, what is your message to Americans who want to know why American taxpayers should support Ukraine?
Two messages. First of all, we are extremely thankful. We appreciate your support. You did fantastic job in supporting us. Thank you very much. Second thing is that Ukraine in 1994 voluntarily gave up its nuclear weapons. Absolutely, it was the first time in human history we did it under the security guarantees from the United States. So support from the United States is not just a charity, it's also something you promised us to do. It's the responsibility of the United States for non-proliferation policy. Because if Ukraine will fall apart, if Ukraine will be finished by Russians, it will mean nobody else in the world will listen to anything. They will go nukes, because this will be the only way to secure its independence. So we need to save Ukraine today, and once again, in future, you can count on Ukraine.
All right, Oleksiy Goncharenko, member of Parliament in Ukraine. Thank you, sir. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.